Hello, my friends. Welcome to PMP Exam Tech Camp. You've heard a lot about the Tech Camp over the past number of weeks and days. And this is a curriculum where we are going deeper into the PMBOK guide. I want to thank you for joining me, taking time out of your schedule, your quarantine schedule to be here. A lot of people are getting back into the swing of things. And I know time is precious. So we're going to use our time very wisely today. We are going to be covering a number of topics in scope management and schedule management. But let's first of all go over the schedule at a high level. Week 1, starting today, we're covering scope management, plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, validate scope, control scope. And we should get done about the 1.5 hour mark, which is probably where we will take a break, let you guys recharge, get something to refresh yourself. And then we're going to come back and hit schedule management for roughly 2 hours. We're going to be covering plan schedule management, define activities, sequence activities, where a lot of us have questions about network diagrams. So we'll cover network diagrams in a lot of detail. We'll talk about estimate activity durations. And then we'll talk about develop schedule, where again, a lot of you had questions. Schedule compression, leads, lag, slack, float, and all that stuff. So we'll take a look at that as well. And then we'll go on down to control schedule and we'll be done for the day. And at the end, I'll have a little quiz for you in schedule management. And I'll also have one for you in scope management that you can take offline, because we only have 4 hours and it goes by very quickly, I can assure you. So our major focus, like I said, is to cover scope and schedule. So we're going to start off with scope management, starting from the very beginning and going all the way through. For those of you who are just arriving, welcome. We've been talking about the schedule and what we have to accomplish today. Quite a lot. And that's why 4 hours is just enough for us to do this. Before I get started, for those of you that have not been in any of my classes, my name is Phil. I will be your colleague, your host, your friend, taking you through this journey. I got certified in 2005. It was a very tough exam, I can assure you. It was a very, very, very tough exam. So I got certified in 2005, and ever since I got certified, I've been helping people in their PMP, CAPM, anything PMI related. So originally from a technical background, but I've worked in many industries: IT, training, aerospace, engineering, health, gaming, and so on. And I have 6 PMI certifications, also Scrum certified. My latest certification was just 2 days ago from scrum.org, Ken Schwaber's company, the co-creator of Scrum. And I just woke up and thought, you know, I should take this exam. I read through a blog, and as I read through that blog, I just got inspired. Phil, you should take that PSM exam, you know. And I did. So that's the kind of person I am. Where I ask you to go, I go. If I'm asking you to do something, I have done it. So one of the first things I would say you guys should do is introduce yourselves in chat. I've introduced myself. You introduce yourself. Quick, 1 sentence. This is my name. I'm in this company, or this is what I do, or this is the business I own, or whatever, anything you want to say. Which industry are you from? Healthcare, engineering, whatever background you want to share. I just want to get to know you a little bit more. Some of you, I have not met you before. We've not been on classes before together. So I'm curious to know if we have crossed paths in industries or something to that effect. So welcome, Adrian. We're just at the point where we are doing intros, and I'm asking people to introduce themselves by chatting into the chat box, just to get to know each other a little bit more, because we're on a journey for 4 weeks together. So I'm just curious to know a little bit more about your background, what your goals are for this training, anything you want to share. I would really appreciate it. And I am going to go through all of those during the break. So right now, I'm just going to give shout outs to everyone who is on the call. So Adrian just joined. Welcome, Adrian. Chris, David, Delita, Doran, Fabian, Holly, Ifeolu, Joanne. Welcome, Joanne. Joanne is a PMP guru. She's already a PMP, but has come here to go for a second dose of the PMBOK Guide. It's a very good book, isn't it, Joe? Kathy, Ken, Margaret, I'm glad you could join. Michelle, good to see you today. Muzaffar, I'm glad you joined us, my friend. And Nancy, very good. Good to see you. Pedro, Sadaf, Sandrea, it's been a while. I'm glad you joined us today. Tina, Tony, and we are actually we're missing a few more folks. We're missing a few more folks. So I'm a bit concerned at this point where everyone else is. We should probably have 3 or 4 more people. So Margaret, let me ask you for a favor. I am going to assign you as my co-host only for the purpose of letting whoever is going to be late to get in, because we still have about 4 more people, maybe even more, that are not here. So I'm going to make you a co-host. And as you see people join the meeting room, oh, there we go. You want to try that one, Margaret? You want to let that person in? Someone's trying to join by phone. You see the admit button? Can you admit them? It's a phone number. Do you see that? The admit button? Very good. Thank you, Margaret. Awesome. Good. All right. Well, I'm really happy you guys aren't shy. Thank you for the introductions. Thank you, Delita. Delita is in training and development. Joe is a PMP already. And Joe, you do know Delita is in the Facebook group. Kathy works in government, has a very robust background in project management. Kathy has been on my class before, and a lot of folks here have been as well. Nancy, retired from the Air Force. Thank you for your service, Nancy. I did not know that. Thank you. Thank you very much. David, thank you for joining in construction, works for local government. Ken, thank you for your service, retired from the Army. Sandria works for MTA. Yes, I recall you said that. Very good. So putting another layer on top of the CAPM, awesome. Ifeolu, I did not know that was your background. Very cool. Interior design, very nice. The PMP will serve you well. Tony in IT project management. I'm glad you joined again, Tony. It's great to see you. Sadaf, as always, good to see you. Sadaf has been on a class previously, and good to see you here. And I remember healthcare, the fun and games, yes. Chris in oil and gas, yes, I recall that, Chris. Oil and gas is going through a huge amount of pressure right now. One of our clients, they just had to cut back 1/4 of their workforce. So very, very, very tough. So this will serve you well, Chris, for sure. Michelle, thank you. Government, I love government, I must tell you that, because they've been my faithful clients, even more faithful than private firms, I tell you that. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret is our brain behind the scenes. A lot of what happens, it happens because she came up with an idea or a better mousetrap. Doran, good to see you. Very good. Ah, the fun place, Doran. Lovely, lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. No problem, Sandria. Muzaffar, good to see you, my friend. I did not know you had DoD ties. That is fun and games for me. I love the DoD. And finance. Very good, Muzaffar. Thank you for sharing that. Fabian works for one of our friends that helps convey us from one point to another. Very good to see you, Fabian. Tina, good to see you today. Financial manager in government. DC is one of my favorite places. We got good clients over there. Pedro, oh, I did not know. You see, I told you I wanted to see if we had crossed paths in some way professionally. I did not know you were a civil engineer either. So my background is civil, and I have actually taught Siemens. So we have a bit in common. I taught Siemens out in Mechanicsburg a while back. Holly, good to see you. Holly's in software. And Holly, do you guys use Scrum? I think we've had this conversation sometime before. Do you use Agile, any of the Agile methods? Trying to remember if we've had that conversation. Jackie, you joined. Thank goodness. I was I was hoping I would see you on today, Jackie. So I'm very glad you made it in. I was not sure if you made it in or not. And you were one of the people I had on my mind. Very good. Very good. Salvation Army Social. Okay, very nice. Thank you, Jackie. Lovely. Lovely. Let's get this PMP under your belt. And Tina says DOE. Oh, very good. So Tina, you do know that some of the stuff I will present today is from the DOE, believe it or not. In the area of scope management, the WBS, the DOE has a rather robust scope management and cost management training assortment. So my friends, it's great to meet you. Thank you for the intros. The intros are extremely important, right? Very important to me because it's not just about the content, it's about you. I want to know who you are. I want to help you meet your goals. I want to know if we've crossed paths in some way or if we have any commonalities apart from being project managers. And it's just a pleasure to have you here. It's very important, very important. So it's not a waste of time. Here's some of the companies that Praizion has trained and some of the entities we just mentioned. In government, you see them on the screen. The ground rules, you will be in classroom mode. Because it's recorded, I normally ask students, you don't have to share your camera, it's all right, because your buddy Phil is gonna be the person speaking most of the time anyway. So no pressure, no cameras needed. Once in a while, I may ask the question, do you wanna share a tip or a trick? Especially if you are a PMP. Hint, Joe? I might ask you, what do you think about this? Do you think this is real world or not? But no pressure, Joe. I know you're here to chill and just to absorb the content, so I won't heckle or harass you, as I normally do. So I'm glad you joined us, Joe. Joe is a PMP. Joe has been through the online training. She's drunk the Kool-Aid. So she's not here in the capacity of a trainer. She just wants to chill. So I'll cut Joe some slack. All right. You'll be in classroom mode, like I said. If there's a technical issue and I go offline, you might become a co-presenter. Margaret is the co-host. So if anything happens, she'll hold down the fort till I get back. Hopefully I don't go offline. But on weekends, I mean, our friends all around the world are watching Netflix all day long. So imagine everyone all trying to power down on that poor Wi-Fi. So I hope not. But anyway, one of my rules is ask what you do not know. If there's not enough time to answer it, I will get back to you eventually, I promise. I will get back to you. So whatever you're not comfortable with, please ask. So we're going straight into scope management. What is scope management? Think about it for a second. I don't just want to give you answers. I want you to think about the answer for yourself. So think about it for a minute. When we say scope management, what do we really mean? Scope management. So on the screen here, you can see it includes the processes required to ensure that the project includes all the work required to complete the project successfully. That's really what it is. So you may ask the question, how do I do a good job in scope management? Here's some tips. Remember, managing the scope is concerned with defining. You got to define what is in the project, and then you got to control what is not in the project as well from getting in. Don't let it get in. The term requirement is defined as a condition or capability that is required to be present in a product, service, or result to satisfy an agreement or other formally imposed specification. So you need to be asking, how do I find all the requirements? How do I know my client wants a red beverage? Because they said so, which means I need to do everything possible to ensure that that beverage ends up being red. If it ends up being orange, scope has not been met, because scope is two things. Project scope, what you are meant to do to manage the project, and product scope, the features and functions that the deliverable must have. So if you're a project manager, you want to set yourself up for success by asking, how do I do all the things on the project from a project management perspective that the customer expects me to do? Audits, weekly meetings, walkthroughs, compliance to project management standards, compliance to what the PMO says. How do I make sure I do all the project scope? And then you also need to ask the question, how do I make sure my client's beverage has all the requirements? Product scope. In order to meet product scope, you need to do the project scope. In order to make it a red beverage, I need to do the management of the work effectively. So I want you to think about project scope and product scope. And both of these are what you do in scope management. Completion of the project scope is measured against the project management plan, while completion of the product scope is measured against the product requirements. If it meets everything else, but it's not red, it's not met scope. And that's your job as the project manager, to meet scope. Requirements have always been a concern in project management and have continued to gain more attention in the profession. There are many ways you can collect requirements, many ways. There are special meetings you could have, there's brainstorming you could do, and many things. So, project scope management includes the processes required to ensure that the project includes all the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. Managing the project scope is primarily concerned with defining and controlling what is and what is not included in the project. So think about it. As a project manager, you need to ensure that the work required to make my beverage red is done, but you don't want your team to do unnecessary work to meet that requirement if it doesn't really need to be done. You see what I'm saying? So your job as a project manager in the very beginning is to scope out the project and see if indeed what team members are saying they should do is what they really need to do. Sometimes work people do on the project is not necessary. You know, someone might say, I want to create a report. Why? I just feel like it. No, it's not part of the project scope. And it will amaze you how many projects have work that is not related to the product scope. So this is your job, project manager, and you're going to do this in 6 ways. 1, you're going to plan scope management. You're going to create a plan for your team on how to manage scope, on how to define product scope. That's the first thing. It always starts off with a plan. How are we going to collect requirements? How are we going to define the scope? It's the big how, okay? The next process is collecting the requirements. Whatever you need to do, in the back of your mind, you want to think about yourself as a collections agent based on what you do. But you don't want to be aggressive about it. You want to use requirements elicitation to draw the requirements out. So in the real world, your clients aren't giving you requirements. You can't get aggressive like a collection agent might. But in the back of your mind, oh, that's my role in this process. And then you use elicitation to draw it out gently, to collaborate. The next process is define scope. So now you have your requirements. You need to define the work to get that requirement in the deliverable. Phil is the client. He wants a red beverage. What do we need to do to make it red? This is what you do in define scope. You're not defining what the requirement is. That's already done in collect requirements. You know he wants a red beverage. Your work in define scope is how do we do it? What is the work required? Oh, well, we need to go down the street to Albertsons and get red color in and put in the beverage. Okay, it meets that requirement. What about his requirement that it be very fruity, but at the same time healthy? Then you need to think about the work required to make it a fruit drink, to make it healthy. That work, you need to come up with the work. What are you going to put in it? How far do you need to go to meet that requirement? That's what you do in define scope. Define scope is not requirements, it's work. Someone may need to write that down. Define scope is not requirements, it's work to deliver the requirements already defined. Create WBS is the next one. And this is where I said that the friends at the DOE, they did a great job with the WBS modules they put out there. And we're going to take a look at an example of a WBS. But the scope that you've defined needs to be an input to create WBS. And in create WBS, you create the work breakdown structure that visually guides you on what the project should contain. It shows in hierarchy the topmost level of the project, the root node, the control accounts, any planning packages and other components, moving all the way down to the work package. We'll take a look at that when we get there. Validate scope. This is the fun one where your customer reviews the deliverable that you have created. It's a very special process. It's the process of formalizing acceptance of the completed project deliverables. And the final one that we have in scope is monitoring the status of the project and product scope and managing changes to the scope baseline. Those are the 6 that we're going to talk about, okay? Now, those of you who looked at the curriculum, you saw I included the mindset regarding studying for the PMP exam. Well, let me just tell you the mindset at a high level using scope as an example. This is scope management. As you study in your head, you need to ask which of these is in initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling or closing. You need to be able to shelve them. And ultimately, page 25 needs to be a been there, done that type of thing for you. The quicker you do it, the better. Page 25. If you're not able to draw out page 25, I want to challenge you to attempt it and work on it until you're able to do it. Okay? So as you can see here, we have 6 processes. 4 are in planning, 2 are in monitoring and controlling. That's how you need to think about it. That's the mindset. Another piece of my mindset is a knowledge area a day keeps the PMP blues away. Whatever knowledge area you want to study, study. But do study a knowledge area a day. It could be the same knowledge area for a number of days, but don't go a day without studying. I would also advise you, don't go a day without taking a quiz for your PMP. I'm telling you what I did. I was obsessed to the nth degree when I was studying for my PMP. For 6 months, all I did on Saturdays, go to the library, stick my head in the books for 8 hours, come out of the library, rest. Sunday, not the library, but I would still go for it for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. Study, study, study. Days of the week when I was going to work, I would listen to audio on my drive to work. I would get to work. Anytime I had downtime, I was sticking my head into a learning management system module or quiz. And during break times, aggressively protected my break time. Why? Because I would go down to the parking in the basement, shut the car, turn on my, at that time, it was a BlackBerry. There were no iPhones back then. And I would go through my BlackBerry notes that I had made, and I would drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Blind submission to the world of the PMI and the PMBOK guide. PMI said it, okay, I take it. That's the mindset until you take your exam. And then you can say, what on earth are you talking about, PMI? But you cannot do that right now. You see, being a PMP has privileges that Joe and I know about. When you get certified, then you can debate the guide. For now, I would say read the book, but don't criticize the book to the point where you are so mad at it because it will affect your studying. You got to maintain the positive mental attitude. Let me do the frustration for you. I'll do the frustration about the guide. And if there are any discrepancies, I'll let you know. Some of you have let me know about discrepancies. You flag them and, but I want you to have a positive mental attitude. Enough said. Let's talk about the first process. It's called plan scope management. Now, organically speaking, I like thinking about things organically, right? So a lot of this training is going to be very organic. I'm not going to go through reams and reams of PMBOK guide. I just want you to get the mindset. Once you get the mindset, you are flying, just cutting through the air. Once you get the mindset, all right? So I want you to think about this process, plan, scope management. I don't want to show you all the babble in the guide yet. But think about it. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing plan, scope management? Why? Why am I doing this process? For direction, for focus, so that we know where we're going. That's why, all right? So we already know what scope management is. And one of the first things we should do before anything else is plan, okay? How do we manage scope? How do we collect requirements? How do we ensure that scope is completed? How do we make sure that we do a good job? Okay, so this is the very first thing that you do. Plan scope management, as I'm going to present it to you, is different from how some of you have seen it before. What you are seeing on the screen on the left-hand side are tools and techniques that we are going to talk about organically. And what you'll see on the right-hand side is the output. Get it? I'm going to give you memory joggers to remember the tools and techniques as we discuss. And the memory joggers are really the images. So let's start off from the process. Plan scope management is a process where you develop a scope management plan and a requirements management plan so that we can guide the project in scope. What are the tools and techniques? The lady with the glasses, expert judgment. If you've been there before, you have an idea of how to get there again. If you've been on projects in the firm, if you understand what exactly the project is meant to achieve, if you have expertise in any of the areas in the project, then of course the project manager would want to consult with you. That's expert judgment. Then you can see the board with the pie chart. That is data analysis, and that's how I will show data analysis in most of the slides. And then meetings, you can see people gathered around a table. And they just speak for themselves. You want to look for alternatives for managing the scope. That's why you have alternatives analysis, you see? So if you have a copy of the PMP guide, as we go through this, my friends, you might want to have your PMP guide open. And you might want to go to 5.1, and you might want to follow along with me, okay? 5.1, and just follow along. And it's right there on page 134. And you can see something very similar to what I've been talking about here. So, this is plan scope management. Whenever you look at any of these, you need to ask the question, what is in it for me? This is what is in it for you. You see that? The scope management plan, the requirements management plan. That is what is in it for you. Then the next step is to say, what is in these plans? And that is when you open up your PMP guide and you begin to go into the details. But I don't want to go into the details. You can read the details. Okay, so for now, you're going to know that these two help you in carrying out scope and carrying out the collection of requirements. You take a look at your tools and techniques, expert judgment, data analysis, and meetings. Ensure you understand, why do I need experts? Oh, to help me plan how to manage scope, okay? Why do I use data analysis? So I can explore the alternatives for managing scope. And why do I have meetings? Well, how do you get the experts to give you whatever they're giving you? Meetings. A number of meetings could be held. All right, so this is the first process of scope management. Does this make sense? Do you have questions about this first process? Any questions? Any misunderstandings? Okay, none. Very good. Speaks for itself. Good. Let's go to the next process of scope management, if there are no questions. Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Let's go to our next one. Our next one is collect requirements. Now, for this one, you need to think about yourself like a collections agent in terms of role, but not in terms of attitude. Don't be pushy and aggressive, but be persistent. Can I have the requirements? What are your requirements? How many? How much? Can we define this in more detail? What kind of uptime are you thinking about? What should the tensile strength be? On and on. You're trying to get down to the technical requirements, the functional requirements, the business requirements, all manner of requirements. That's your job. And what do you get out? You get out these two things. One, I want to stress this one first, is called a requirements traceability matrix. It is a document that tracks requirements to their origin. It is used quite a lot in IT. It could also be used in the world of product management for products. You could even use it for a service. There's no end to using it, but it's more popular in the world of IT and products. Okay, it maps requirements to their origin. So hold on to that thought. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. The other one is requirements documentation. I want you to think about it like this. If I am a requirements collections agent, I gotta put my requirements somewhere, just like you would put your money in the bank. If you were a collections agency, collect the money, get it to your client. In this case, you need to think about your requirements. Where am I gonna put them? So if you're not putting them in a requirements traceability matrix, think about requirements documentation as the next alternative. because not everyone creates an RTM. A lot of the companies I train, they say, Phil, we don't use an RTM. We just put it in a document. We call it a requirements document. Or they say, Phil, we have a scope Excel file, we put it in there. And I tell them, well, that's your requirements documentation. Requirements documentation has a unique definition in the PMP guide. And it tells you the requirements documentation helps explain how the requirements meet the business need, as requirements should. You should understand, why do you want it? Why do you want the system to do X? Oh, we want the system to do X because we have anomalies every now and again. Our people on the tarmac that are doing the baggage handling, they have hours that don't meet the regular requirements. And as a result of union rules, we need to code the system to make exceptions. Oh, okay. All of that stuff, it could be in a requirements document. All right. How do you collect your requirements? Let's take a look. We use a number of things here. So we got the brain box with the glasses, expert judgment. We've got data gathering, which is this folder. We've got data analysis. In this one, I use the magnifying glass. You're analyzing this histogram. We've got decision making, the robot trying to make up its mind. Should I do X or Y? Is that right or wrong? Decision making. And under decision making, we've got two things we'll talk about. We've got voting. As you can see here, we've got voting and we've got MCDA, multi-criteria decision analysis. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Then we've got data representation. So how do you represent your data? That's that. We've got interpersonal and team skills. Obviously doing a good job there. You see the smile. Interpersonal and team skills. And here you can see we've got a few things: nominal group technique, observation and conversation, and facilitation. We'll talk about those. We've got context diagrams, and context diagrams just show how a business system interacts with the actors around the system. The actors are people putting data into the system, or entities taking data out of the system. How does data get in? How does it get out? That's a context diagram. And we have prototypes, the robot, to show early feedback. And those are your tools and techniques. And let me be honest, before I heard about someone else's perspectives to these things, I really wasn't aware of how bad the tools and techniques were. So Margaret, who is on the call here, who works with Praizion, took the CAPM exam. And after her CAPM exam said, you know, these tools and techniques, they're pretty bad. So I went back and I thought, my, oh my, let me give myself a quick test. You want to do this, follow me. Open up your PMP guide, go to page 686. Go to page 686. And I want you to take a look at every name from page 686 to page 694. If you can go full steam, full speed, without stopping once to think, hey, wait a minute, I doff my hat to you. I could not do that until she made it clear that, hey, you know, tools and techniques are pretty bad. Ever since she alerted me to that, I have been paying a lot more attention to the tools and techniques because they are just decadent, some of them. You gotta go through the entire list. So this is one of the to-dos I'm giving you. Page 686 to 694. Go through every tool and technique, sub-tool and technique, with a fine-tooth comb. Don't take any prisoners because they're all bad, each and every one of them, each and every one. You see, the PMI, they show you on page 686 which tool and technique is used in 5.2. That immediately throws you for a loop. Wait a minute, what's 5.2? You see why I want you to go through this table? Because it will make you think about every process and every tool and technique used in every process. So it starts off with data gathering and then it goes into data analysis. But as you keep going through the pages, you get to a place where it says ungrouped tools and techniques, page 691. Now, I want you to pay close attention to those that are in the ungrouped section. Why? Because those are usually the unique tools and techniques that you only see in one or two places. So if you take a look at page 691, 692, 693, 694, you have ungrouped tools and techniques. You see that? And that's why in this study, a lot of my focus is on the technicalities, tools and techniques. That's why it's a tech camp. So if you take a look one more time, my friends, all of these things we're looking at, we gotta blow them out to greater proportion in this process. So let's go back to our slides for a quick second and let's begin to explore. We've taken a look at scope, plan scope management. Let's begin to explore what happens in collect requirements in a little bit more detail, just a little bit more detail. So I'm going to take you through this journey. Again, let's reorient ourselves. This is collect requirements. And you can see we've got a number of things. Brainstorming, interviews, focus groups, questionnaires and surveys, benchmarking, document analysis, voting, MCDA, affinity diagrams, mind mapping, nominal group technique, observation and conversation, facilitation, context diagrams, prototypes, a lot. So let's try to take some of these baddies down. Let's start off with interviews, the easy one. This could be formal, it could be informal, and the main goal is to ask questions, get responses, okay? Good. Focus groups bring together specific stakeholders, not everyone, specific stakeholders and subject matter experts, SMEs, to discover specific information regarding their attitudes regarding a proposed deliverable. A moderator facilitates interactive discussion to be in the form of dialogue. It has a dynamic feel compared to one-on-one interviews, okay? Keep that in mind, good. Brainstorming. Our main goal is to obtain a comprehensive list of project and product requirements. It's performed by the project team with stakeholders from the project. It could be free form or it could be structured. You could use mass interviewing techniques, for example, nominal group technique along with this. So let's talk about the nominal group technique. So imagine your team brainstorms regarding requirements, and then you use the nominal group technique. It enhances brainstorming further by using a voting process. So let's say we've all brainstormed, we got all these ideas, but not every idea that is brainstormed is the best of the ideas. So we want to vote as a team to get the best ideas. But we call it nominal group technique because we're going to rank the ideas. After you vote, we rank. And those that get to the top, those are the ideas or the requirements that make it. Those that sink to the bottom, they stay there. Mind mapping. You've heard of mind mapping before. This is what consolidates all those brainstormed ideas. It shows the interconnections between the ideas. Here's an example of a mind map. This is a mind map about how to mind map, which I always find funny. But you can mind map anything. You can mind map how to be a great tennis player. You can mind map how to pass the PMP exam. But you are now linking these brainstormed ideas. For example, what contributes to PMP exam success? Studying. Okay. What contributes to effective studying? Oh, having great materials, having a great trainer, having the inspiration, many, many things. And you create a web of interconnectedness. The next thing you can use is affinity diagrams. Affinity diagrams are just a diagram that you can use to categorize your requirements into groups. So in this example, you can see the affinity diagram has been used, though not to collect requirements, but to group data. In this one, it was an idea about why the supply chain is failing or why a process is not effective. And they categorized ideas into, oh, the equipment is the problem, or processes, or complexity level of the process, or the interfaces, or the supply chain itself, or whatever. So you got to remember, when you think of affinity diagram, think about grouping, affinity, grouping, affinity diagram, right? So it was developed by Jiro Kawakita in the 1960s, sometimes referred to as the KJ method. MCDA, multi-criteria decision analysis. It uses a decision matrix to evaluate and rank ideas, a systematic analytical approach for establishing criteria. So this is how you need to be thinking. If you're using an MCDA, you could think of things like this. Let's say you've got 3 requirements: requirement 1, requirement 2, requirement 3. Think about scoring these requirements in terms of value. What is the value that each requirement brings? What about the ease of deployment of the requirement? What about the cost to implement? So you could give them a range of points on a scale of 1 to 5 for each category. And this is how you would use an MCDA to score these things. So at the end of the day, when you have scored everything, you then give total points for each requirement. And those requirements that end up having the highest points, for example, this would be a 7, this would be a 10. Let's put some other numbers here, 2 and a 4. So you can see requirement 2 is 10 points. That would be at the top of the stack. It would beat the other requirements as far as whatever scoring model you use. If there's risk or uncertainty in a requirement more than others, you may not want to do it. But if the value is high, it could turn the tables. All right, so that's how you would use an MCDA. Next on the list to be discussed here is voting. And voting is as simple as it gets. It's just, you got a team and you ask them, using 5 fingers, 5 being I absolutely agree, 1 being I don't really think that's good, and so on. So from not very good to yeah, I really think that's great. You could use voting. But when you use voting, there are some other parameters that you need to be aware of. And these parameters we need to discuss. So before we go any further, let's open up our PMP guide and talk about voting. Under collect requirements. Can anyone chat in the page number if you find it, please? Anyone found voting under collect requirements? What page do we have? 144. Thank you very much. 144. Okay. So let's take a look at this. And let's advance our slide to voting. Okay. So there are a few things talked about here. It says voting is a collective decision-making technique and an enhancement process Having multiple alternatives. So you've all done voting at some point, probably. But examples of voting techniques given on page 144 are as follows. Unanimity, a decision that is reached whereby everyone agrees. So for unanimity, everyone must agree. Then we have majority, a decision that is reached with support obtained from more than 50%. More than 50% must agree for it to be majority. Then we have plurality, a decision is reached whereby the largest block in a group decides, even if majority is not achieved. And still under decision making, we have autocratic decision making. Now, they separate this from voting because it's not really voting. When someone says, I make the decision, that's not really voting, is it? You're being an autocrat at that point. So no one else has a choice. It's not voting. And that's why they've left it on its own as autocratic decision making. All right. So let me give you a few visualizations to make this stick. This is how I normally teach voting to my students at the very beginning. I use an image like this. So this I would say this is plurality. This is not more than 50%, so it is plurality. And the largest block in the group, which I will label group A or block A, they make the decision because it's the largest block. So it could be a business unit, it could be a faction, whatever. That's plurality. When we talk about majority, majority has to be greater than 50%. So majority could look something like this. And then when we talk about unanimity, this must be what you're thinking about. Unanimity. Okay? And then when you think about dictatorship, dictatorship is just, or autocratic decision making is just me. I am the only person who has a say in the matter. All right? So that is voting. And again, remember what we're doing here. We are voting on requirements. That is the idea, voting on requirements. Okay? Very good. All right, let's get done with these baddies. So next we have questionnaires and surveys. A written set of questions to gather information from a large audience. It is useful when the turnaround is needed, quick turnaround is needed. Now, bear in mind that you don't only have brainstorming, there is something known as brain writing. Brain writing is when you ask people to come prepared with their brainstormed ideas, to write them down. So you're not brainstorming right there in the room. They've already done some work before coming in. We call that brain writing. All right. So questions and surveys is just another way you can survey people to collect requirements. But all the other things we've looked at, affinity diagrams and so on, those are also relevant. All right. Next one here is observations. Once upon a time, my job was to sit down in a room and to use a laminating machine. And guess what? They were looking at me as I was doing it from the cameras to see how I interacted, how I did my job. Based on how I used the machine, they got additional requirements to make it better. So from observations, you could glean requirements as far as what needs to be done. Another example, when I worked in IT effectiveness at Honeywell, one of the things we did in working on a software tool for IT services was to actually see how the IT techs did their job and what data they used. And based on our observations, we knew to add certain features and functions in the software by observing. So observations could be really powerful. The next one is prototypes. Remember the robot? Prototypes allow for rapid feedback. It is so helpful. You know, another job I worked on, we created a prototype for P&G, and we gave them a prototype, and immediately before we left the room, it was a rapid application development session. Before we left the room, we started getting feedback from them about, this is great, this, not so, this is great, this is, no, that doesn't work, that works. Immediately. Instead of going off on a rabbit trail and creating stuff people don't need. Prototypes are a great way of getting early feedback. All right, next one is benchmarking. Samsung, iPhone. Who came first? iPhone. They came up with a bunch of ideas. Who took the ideas and made them a benchmark, to put it politely, so as not to offend us Android users, huh? But they took a lot of what Apple had. Now, whether they made it a better product is debatable, but they had a benchmark. The iPhone was their benchmark. So benchmarking compares a planned process or practice to one in a comparable company, finding out what is the best practice, getting ideas of what could be improved, using one's practice for a basis of improvement in another. All right, context diagrams. Context diagrams depict product scope by showing a business system, and it shows how people and other systems interact with it. Here's an example. Swish Swash Windshield Wiper Company. You can see the customer, how the customer is interacting with the system. See that? That's the customer. That's another customer. Put in information in or taking information out. Business partner using the order management feature. A reseller as well. The business analyst, how are they interacting with it? Business activity reports, pulling data, just interacting with the system. Here's another example. We've all been here before. Now, I don't know whether you guys are going here in the middle of COVID, but you ever bought something from a fast food place at the window? The order system on the back end and how you may be interacting with it. Or maybe Amazon. How do you interact with the Amazon system? How does the warehouse tech interact with the system? How does money get taken from your bank and given to them? And so on. How do they put money in their bank? So that's really what this is, context diagram. All right. The next one here is document analysis. So remember my example to you about the tarmac and how we had bag handlers working on the tarmac in a previous company I worked in, and we were creating a system for overtime and managing clock-ins and clock-outs and making sure people got the right credit and the right pay and so on. I cannot tell you how many documents the poor Java coders had to go through. It even had my head spinning, and I'm a business person. And they were telling me all the business rules that they had to code into the system. How did they know the business rules? By sitting down and doing a document analysis, analyzing existing documents to identify information relevant to requirements. Well, the baggage handlers belong to a union, and the union says X, Y, and Z. And here's the multiplication factor, and here are all the clauses. That's document analysis, my friends. All right? So sometimes we got to go through a lot to get our requirements. All right? So over the past number of minutes, we have been talking about these tools and techniques: brainstorming, interviews, focus groups, questions and surveys, brainstorming, document analysis, voting, MCDA, affinity diagrams, mind mapping, nominal group technique, questionnaires, and surveys, no, observations, I beg your pardon. Observations and conversation, facilitation. We didn't really touch much on that, but that is where the project manager facilitates cross-functional teams, you know, to make sure that they agree on requirements and they can get to a decision point. context diagrams, and prototypes. So all of those, I took the time to go through them because each one is important. And you may encounter each one throughout the course in other areas, okay? Tina says, there's a rank structure used when evaluating proposals. Yes, that's a good example of MCDA, absolutely. So your source selection criteria, absolutely. That would be another good example. Very good. Thank you. All right. So my friends, you see, I told you we're going to go deep into this stuff. Everyone has their books open. That's the way to do it. Very good. Very good. Pedro says, my experience is most time the customer doesn't know what they want. Thank you for that chat. Joanne says, is the main difference between the two documents who requested the requirement? Actually, not really. One could be looked at more as maybe coming from the business, if you wanted to say that. But at the same time, those same business people could have additional requirements that are explicitly mentioned in the RTM. It really depends. And companies differ. And that's why when I go with one route, it has to be the PMBOK guide route. You know, so I go with what they say. Let me show you real quick here. There's some really good information here that helps you realize who is responsible for what. So let's take a look at the output of requirements, collect requirements, page 147. So it says, requirements documentation describe how individual requirements meet the business need for the project. Requirements may start out at a high level and become progressively more detailed. This is page 147, as more information about the requirement is known. Before being baseline, requirements need to be unambiguous, traceable, complete, consistent, and acceptable to key stakeholders. The format of the requirements document, you see they call it requirements document, may range from a simple document listing all the requirements categorized by stakeholder and priority. So the stakeholders are who this is from, nonetheless, to elaborate forms containing an executive summary, detailed descriptions, and attachments. Now, if you turn the page over, this is where some rather important information is. And it's so important that I want to write it out for you guys to pay close attention to. So over here we have, and I'll just abbreviate, business requirements, stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, transition and readiness requirements, project requirements, and quality requirements, to mention a few. This is just a cross-section of requirements that could exist in the world of project management. Business requirements, high-level needs of the organization, such as business issues or opportunities, and reasons why a project has been undertaken. Those are very important. Stakeholder requirements describe needs of a stakeholder or group. Solution requirements, these describe features, functions, and characteristics of the product, service, or result. Transition and readiness requirements, these describe temporary capabilities such as data conversion and training requirements needed to transition from the current as-is state to the desired future state. Project requirements, these describe the actions, processes, or other conditions the project needs to meet. And then we've got quality requirements. These capture any condition or criteria needed to validate the successful completion of a project deliverable or fulfillment of other project requirements. So there's quite a lot of stuff to talk about here, but you don't want to lose sight of these, okay? The next thing that I want to show you guys in the world of requirements collection is the RTM. So let's take a quick look at the requirements traceability matrix, the second thing that you get out of this. So the requirements traceability matrix is a table that links requirements to their origin. It tracks requirements through the life cycle. It ensures approved requirement associated deliverables are delivered at project end. It's a structure for managing scope. And you can see here the outline. You can have requirements to business needs, requirements to opportunities, requirements to goals. You could map requirements to project objectives. You could map a requirement to many, many things, to a WBS deliverable, to product design, to product development, such and such. And I've had my own run-ins with an RTM while I was at IT effectiveness at Honeywell, because what my boss wanted us to do was to take all these requirements and track them like no man's business. Track them. I mean, every stakeholder requirement was captured in this requirements traceability matrix. By the time we were done, we had about 120 plus requirements. And guess what we did? As we got to the end of the project, this is what we did. When we got towards the end, every stakeholder needed to accept. They needed to say accept. So we had a shared portal, and we just had a document where everyone that had asked for anything needed to accept that requirement. In other words, they needed to test that that requirement was inherent in the software implementation. So we had a column that had test scripts. In other words, it had a link to a test script for that requirement. And we had test scripts and use cases for everything. And that's how you want to do it, to make sure that stakeholders really buy in and say, that's what I wanted, you've done it. All right. Okay. So let's go back to where we were in the very beginning. I want to show you guys what we've been talking about so far. So far, we've been talking about the first two in scope management. Do you guys have any concerns about the first two processes of scope? Does it all make sense? All make sense? Very good. Okay, well, it looks like we're doing well. The next number of processes go by very, very quickly because they are a lot simpler. Collect requirements is a beast, I tell you. It's a beast. So let's go to our next process, define scope. Let's talk about define scope. Define scope is that process where you are aiming at getting your project scope statement, this thing right here. This is what you want to get. Why do we care about the project scope statement? Where do we start? Have you ever worked with people that say, Phil, I thought you were going to give me X or Y. Why didn't you give me this? That wasn't part of the project. Oh, I didn't know that. You see, you work with certain people that you need to help them. You need to help them. Some projects are very complex and people need help to know this piece is not part of the project. They need help. What do we call that? Exclusions. Some team members are the opposite. They need help to know this is part of the project. Therefore, we need to do work package or work piece X or Y. So in define scope, my friends, we're going to get a project scope statement. And a project scope statement is a document that explains inclusions, exclusions, and the detailed deliverable description and the acceptance criteria so that there's no shadow of doubt as to what exactly should be done on the project. Inclusions, exclusions, detailed deliverable description, acceptance criteria. And I mean detail. To whatever level you need detail. Okay? Now, in the PMBOK guide, there's a table that shows you that this document is not the same as a project charter. Let's go to that image. Because a lot of people say, Phil, but this sounds like what's in the project charter. No, not the same. Go to page 155. Let's take a quick look at page 155. On page 155, you can see project charter and project scope statement. The project charter, project purpose, measurable project objectives, high level requirements, high level project description, overall project risk, summary milestone schedule, pre-approved financial resources, key stakeholder list, not register, list, project approval requirements, project exit criteria, assigned project manager, name and authority of sponsor. But look at the scope statement. It is so easy to understand. There are 4 things there. Project scope description, progressively elaborated, you could say inclusion. Project deliverables, in other words, detailed deliverable description. Acceptance criteria. Under what conditions do we accept this project? And project exclusions, what is not in the project. Very important. So on page 154, there's a lot of talk about what is in the project scope statement. But I also want to call out what needs to happen before you get this. And a lot of people miss this. See, the PMI, sometimes they sneak stuff into the PMBOK guide. They don't mean to, but they do. And I got to show you one of the things that they've snuck in here. So if you go to page 150, this is where they begin telling you about the process we are in, okay? A quick reminder, for those of you that have not been to my training, there's an item of interest that I have to show you, or should I say, an example of an item of interest. One of the things I take very seriously is my highlighter, okay? If you guys have a highlighter, I want you to start highlighting these things I'm telling you, if you've got a physical copy of the PMBOK guide. So do me a favor, I want you to highlight what I'm going to show you, okay? So, page 150. Define scope is a process of developing. I want you to highlight a detailed description. And then I want you to highlight project and product. You see that? A detailed description of the project and product. A detailed description of the project and product. That is what your scope statement is. See that? The key benefits of this process is that it describes the product, service, or result boundaries and acceptance criteria. See that? Okay. Then if you go to page 151, I want you to highlight the first 3 sentences. It says, since all the requirements identified in collect requirements may not be included in the project. You see that? The defined scope process selects the final project requirements from the requirements documentation developed during the collect requirements process. It then develops a detailed description of the project and product, service, or result. So what are they saying? They're trying to tell you collect requirements is not the end of the requirements story. This one right here is the filtering process. This is the filtering process before you lock down the work required. Because if you've got bogus requirements in your collection of requirements, you're going to end up doing bogus work that wasn't needed. So you need to filter out low value, high risk, unnecessary requirements. When you do that, you now define the work needed to effect those requirements in the deliverable. So if you ever get a question that's asking, which process do we make the final selection? It's really this one. All right, so let's read again. It says, the defined scope process, we're going down to the first or the last 4 lines in this paragraph on page 151, the last 4 lines. It says, the defined scope process can be, I want you to highlight, highly iterative. The defined scope process can be highly iterative. In iterative life cycles, a higher level vision will be developed for the overall project, but the, watch this, highlight, detailed scope is determined one iteration at a time. So those of you that were on my Agile classes with Roy, you do know on the PMP exam, the PMI could test you. Not just the PMP though, on the CAPM as well. Before I got on this call, one of my followers on YouTube said, Phil, I owe my CAPM to you. I said, why? Thank you. She said, I had up to 10 Agile questions on my CAPM exam. What? 10? CAPM? I'd said it before. She obviously heard and was prepared. So if you're taking the CAPM exam, those my friends who are taking the CAPM, things have changed. If you look at the CAPM content outline, it's in there. PMPs, just suck it up. You are going to get Agile. You are. So know your Agile bits and pieces. And something like this, talking about iterations in scope management, that needs to be every day to you. Okay? So as we have read through this paragraph, what I want to highlight to you is the importance of going through every process description in the PMBOK guide. Know the description, know the key benefit of every process, and be sure to tackle anything regarding a description. Like you can see, every process has a description, okay? It's got a description, then they show you that little image of the ITTOs, and then they show you a data flow. All those things need to be studied and understood. And then when you get to the end, towards the end of every process description, that's where a lot of the juice is. That's where a lot of the kryptonite is. They're going to try to use. So on page 151, you can see as they have already talked about the key benefits, they begin going into some other mysterious stuff. And that's the case for most processes. The mysterious stuff isn't the first 2 or 3 sentences, no. It's where there's an extended description. And you guys need to be paying attention to that, all right? So in defined scope, if you take a look at the tools and techniques, they're very straightforward. We've got expert judgment, we've got data analysis. We're looking for alternatives for translating the requirements into a product. We've got MCDA, again. We've got facilitation. Everyone knows what that is at this point. But we've got something known as product analysis. And if you take a look at my images here, I've got the lady with the glasses. That's expert judgment. We've got data analysis. We've got alternatives. We've got decision making. We've got interpersonal and team skills, the smiley face there. And then we've got product analysis. This is showing an analysis of a product. We're going to analyze a product. Let me show you what that would look like. In the real world, a product analysis has a number of questions you would ask about a product. You would ask questions revolving around the analysis of the product to be produced. Remember, you don't have it, but you're asking, what should it look like? What should it feel like? What should it taste like? This is carried out by asking questions and gathering answers, as you can see on the screen, to thoroughly understand the scope of the project that must be considered to deliver the required product. How far do I need to go to deliver what the client wants, what the customer wants? It enables the project team understand the important materials, processing, economic, and aesthetic decisions which are required to deliver the required product. So here's a visualization of it. Imagine an MP3 amplifier or extension to an MP3 player. You ask the question, what should it do? Ergonomically speaking, what does that look like? oh, looking at the image, the smooth lines of the design would make it comfortable to handle. Okay, so if that is what you want to do, what does the manufacturing process look like? Well, as this product is clearly mass produced, I think that CAD or CAM, computer aided design or computer aided manufacturing, would have to be used to manufacture it. What about the style? This style is modern. It's a good product to appeal to a wide range of ages, and it comes in different colors. What about the materials? You see, you're doing a 360-degree analysis. What should it look like? What should it feel like? What do we need to do if these are the cases that we're trying to implement in this deliverable? Then we need to do CAD and CAM. Oh, that's going to cost a lot more money than doing it with straight edges. But it has to be done. Okay, it has to be done. It's part of the project scope. If we want this requirement, we have to do this. You get it? Now, those of you who've been in my classes previously, you know about the chicken sandwich. We always talk about the chicken sandwich. There's a guy called Andy George, and he decided to embark on a chicken sandwich project from scratch. And I used this illustration, and I just ran into his channel after using this illustration, and it just helps the more to see all the things they did. So he's got a channel, How to Make Everything. He spent $1,500 in 6 months making a single chicken sandwich from scratch. So he did all these things, you know, grew the vegetable patch, bees for honey, went to the Atlantic to get salt water, milked the cow, everything. So if your customer says, my requirement is a chicken sandwich from scratch, then all the work that Andy George did is relevant. But if the customer didn't say it has to be from scratch, why did you do all this? You could have just gone to Walmart, Tesco, Albertson, Sainsbury's, buy the chicken, grill the chicken, buy the bun, or maybe even get one that's already grilled, microwave it, throw it in the bun, throw whatever you want on it, done. But no, do you see? Requirements. Requirements beget scope. In other words, requirements give birth to scope. Requirements give birth to scope. I'm just recovering from a very long project. The amount of scope that was generated as a result of requirements was mind-boggling. One tiny little requirement, one tiny little ask, could get you hundreds of hours of additional work on a project. And that's why we need to be very careful coming in to define scope, because if we got the requirements wrong, or if we didn't filter the requirements, then we have all this work. So what can we learn from the chicken sandwich analogy? One, review assumptions. Make sure you've got the assumptions right. Make sure you've reviewed the constraints. Identify inclusions, identify all the work that needs to be done, and that is going to help you when you plan, schedule, and cost, okay? You don't want this to be the case. You don't want to collect faulty requirements, because how the customer explained it is different from how the project leader understood it, and then things start going downhill, and then you have all this work that was unnecessary. So ultimately, we're going to create a project scope statement, similar to what you see on the screen, and this is going to help direct you as far as what needs to be done, okay? Very good. Any questions about defined scope? Are we good? Seems like we're good. Awesome. Let's move on from defined scope to, it's that time. Question time. This is one question, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes because you guys are experiencing this in this curriculum for the first time, take a look at this and take a best guess. It's anonymous. No one knows who's voting, and go for it. Give you a minute. Well done. Let's give it 10 more seconds. All right. Delita, you're cracking me up. Okay. 5, 4, 3. Oh dear, oh dear. Thank you very much. Let's end the poll. Let's share the results. Seems like a lot of folks did not vote. But for those who did, yeah, exactly, Holly. If that was the real exam, she would be able to change it. So it's all good. Yes. So it says, which of the following is not true? You see that? So if you read through, it says, since all the requirements identified in collect requirements may not be included in the project, you're working on a particular process to select the final project requirements. And of course, that is talking about defined scope. And it says, which of the following is not true about the unique output of this particular process? In other words, which of these is not true about defined scope? So when you go through it, you find out that B, C, and D are direct cutouts from the PMBOK guide. They're all correct. But A says it is an output of scope management that links requirements to stakeholders. That actually refers to the requirements traceability matrix, so it is incorrect. So the answer is A, which is the incorrect, because it says which of the following is not true. All right. So we had less than a quarter of the class get it right. So read the questions carefully. Watch out for not. Okay. Absolutely. Joanne, you're correct. That's true. Yes. Thank you for chatting the answer in. I think that was Jackie. Thank you. So yes, my friends, just be very, very careful. They don't take any prisoners. And one of the things that has happened to me on previous exams is I would take the exam, take a question, and then I would realize that, oh, this question at question 100, if this is what they're asking, I got question 50 wrong. Run back to question 50, change it. It happens. It happens. I have also noticed, especially based on my most recent professional exam that I took 2 days ago from scrum.org, I realized that if you're not in the right mental zone, you will find it hard. So for me, I jumped on the exam and I had 80 questions to answer in 60 minutes. By the time I got 30 minutes in, I had only answered 30 questions. I had 50 questions left. How am I going to answer 50 questions in 30 minutes and pass the exam? By zoning in, locking into it. And I just went into lock-in mode and focused. And I mowed all them down, and rest is history. But if you're not in the right mental zone, there's no way. You got to be in the right mental zone. And part of being in the mental zone is knowing you've made a mistake. So if you realize a mistake, that is a good thing. All right, let's go to our next one. Here's your next question, my friends. I'm going to give you a minute for this one because it's a little bit shorter. So let's go. Again, it's anonymous, so please vote. Okay. Don't look at the clock. Often. Often is the key. Okay, you guys are doing well. And you got a very good attitude towards this stuff. I have no doubt that you guys are going to do awesome. All right. So let's see what we have. 5, 4, 3, 2, come on. All right, 1. I can understand some of you are multitasking. So majority of us went with A. You're using product analysis. Which output would you derive? Detailed scope, detailed schedule, product roadmap, scope strategy. The answer is the output. Think about it. Think about it. What this is doing is trying to find out, do you know where product analysis is used? It's used in defined scope. What do we get from defined scope? It's this. Nothing else. You do not get scope strategy. You've already got scope strategy from planned scope management. It's not the product roadmap. That's done in schedule management. Okay? That's in developed schedule. You don't get the detailed schedule. Again, that's done in developed schedule. So the answer, my friends, is none other than A. Okay. Very, very good. I understand, Fabian. Thanks for your chat. All right, my friends. Now, you do know I did promise you a break, but I got to be honest, the time zones mess me up. So when I put 2:30 EST, I really was mixed up when I put that in there. So we're going to take a break at the end of scope. So let me get my skates on so that you guys can get a break in very soon, okay? Good. All right, so let's go on to our next process. Our next process is known as create WBS. Again, you know, my perspective to it is what's in it for me? What am I getting from it? Scope baseline. Can you chat into me? What is the scope baseline? Chat into me privately, just to make sure no one sees your chat. Chat into me privately. What is the scope baseline? Clue. 3 things. 3 things. Thank you, Muzaffar. Thank you, Kathy. That is right on the money. So embellish it a little bit more for me. Thank you, Tina. That is correct. Thank you, Muzaffar. That is correct. Thank you, Fabian. Woo! Very good. The coffee worked. Ken, thank you. Tell me the three things. The three things. That is a good description. Now tell me the three specific things. Thank you, Michelle. Right on the money. Thank you, Jackie. Tell me the three specific things. Very good. Awesome job, Margaret. Tell me the last one. Thank you, Sadaf. Very nice. Thank you, Pedro. Now give me more. Give me more. Thank you, Tony. I'm not sure. Okay, very good. Yes, that's it. That's right. You're close. You're close. Thank you, Delita. You guys are close. Okay, very good. Three things. WBS, which you guys already knew. WBS dictionary and the PSS, which we just talked about. The project scope statement. We just talked about this. Right? So let's put a face to the name for the WBS. WBS, it could look something like this. Okay. For those of you that have been in my classes before, you know the topmost level in the WBS, we call it the root node. And under the root node, somewhere, not always at the same place, but somewhere, we have what we call a control account. So we got the control account, and the lowest level in the WBS is the work package. Okay, so the first step is knowing what a WBS is. Also in the WBS, you could have something called a planning package, and it's really a repository of work content that we are not going to decompose down into the work package and task level. We're going to keep it up at a high level. All right, so before you exam, my friends, know the hierarchy of where these things fit. The work package is the lowest level in the WBS. Above the work package level is the planning package level. Above the planning package level is the control account level. And then above the control account level is the root node. And then if it is not one of these things, we just refer to it as a WBS component. So you got to get your hierarchy straight. RCPW, root node, control account, planning package, work package. Create a mnemonic for that, those of you who like mnemonics, okay? So that is what we do in Create WBS. We are going to get a scope baseline. And it is very important that you remember your scope baseline is your WBS dictionary, and your project scope statement. The tool and technique, you can see the hammer and the lady with glasses. Decomposition, we're gonna break it down, decompose, right? That's decomposition, the major thing we use, and we use expert judgment as well, okay? And we get our scope baseline. And if you take a closer look, I'll just share with you the closer look in the PowerPoint. Let's take a closer look at what is written on that document there. So create WBS, we apply expert judgment and decomposition, and then we break it down. Take a look at what's here. WBS dictionary, and the project scope statement. All right? So at a glance, let's talk about this WBS. It was developed by the US Defense Department in the late 1950s and by NASA in the 1960s. It shows various elements of the project, and necessary work is distributed between the elements of the project. It shows how the cost or budget is distributed between the elements of the project. It also shows how the larger elements of the project are subdivided into smaller ones. And Tina, this is what I was talking about when I said DOE, and this is something from the DOE. And it's just an example of a WBS. This is another example of a WBS. You can see it's a horizontal WBS. It is not vertical. You could have WBSs that are vertical, those that are horizontal. You could have a text-based WBS that just has text, not hierarchy per se in imagery, but hierarchy in the way the text is formed. You can have many different types of WBSs. So this is just another type of WBS. In this one, we can see Project Management and Introduction, the book, is broken down into writing the book, editing the book, publishing the book. There are many ways to skin a cat. Well, that doesn't sound very positive, Peter. Sorry, Peter, people. They don't like me saying things like that. I'm talking about birds and stones. So I'll just say there are many ways to carry out work, many ways to break down work, okay? So here's a birthday cake. You can break down the project for the birthday cake into make cake, make frosting, purchase ingredients, perform integration. It's a WBS. Very easy WBS. Here's another example of a WBS. As you can see, the same one I showed you previously. And this one from the DOE is a house, building a WBS for a house. So we start off at the root node, level 1, the house building project. Then we go into level 2, concrete, framing, plumbing, electrical, interior, roofing. Now, those of you that aren't from the world of construction, like some of our friends on the call, you can still relate to how it's been decomposed. That's really what I want you to catch, the decomposition. It's being decomposed, okay? So the cake baking WBS, let's take a look at that one again, since there was a request to look at that one again. Very, very simple. It's very mundane, but at least you kind of get it, okay? So that's it. It's a very mundane example, but it's really to illustrate how things are broken down into categories. And remember, there are many ways you could do it. Those of you that have PhDs in cake baking, you could probably make a better WBS than I did, okay? So talking about the house, going back to the house, if you break down the house building project into level 2, you have something like this. And then level 3, and this is from what the DOE put out there. There's a free set of PDFs from the DOE, and this was one of the examples. I quite like the example. I modified it a little bit, but for the most part, it's from them. And you can see level 1 at the top, level 2, level 3. But not every WBS is a 3-level WBS. Some WBSs have 7 levels, 5 levels, you know. For example, a weapon system that I worked on in a company, name withheld, but the WBS was broken down into many, many levels, 7 levels. And we actually had a contract work breakdown structure that the entity we were working with said it must match this contract related WBS. We want to be able to track stuff. So the WBS could be very, very helpful in identifying all the pieces of work that have to be done, all the pieces. Not going into the tasks. Very important to note, the WBS is not a task list. No, it is a visual hierarchical depiction of the work that needs to be done. So it's not a list of tasks. The WBS should not contain tasks at the lower levels of 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours, no. There are many rules that people put out there, but just think about it like this. If a WBS at the lowest level can contain 1 to 2 weeks worth of work, then you're at the right level. If it's showing days of work, then you need to be careful and say, is my project small enough for me to go lower than 8 hours or 16 hours or 40 hours or whatever your benchmark is? But I try to stay away from making it too granular. WBS is big picture think, okay? And it needs to get to the level that is sufficient for the stakeholders. That is the key thing. So one more time, I'm going to give you a quiz on this. Pay attention. Quiz coming up in the next 2 minutes. So let me give you the key to ace the quiz. It's in this. The topmost level of the WBS is the root node. It usually carries the name of the project. Under the root node, somewhere, not always at level 2, it could be level 3 or something else, depending on how big your project is. Some projects do not even have control accounts because management is like, oh, I know, you got it, you got it. You got it, Jackie, that's fine. We're not going to exert any further control. Just do the project. But some projects, such as those I've managed, they got control accounts coming out of the woodworks. Control accounts with a CAM on top of it. What do I mean by CAM? This is not PMBOK guide stuff, but in the world of government, we would call them control account managers. Can you imagine that? So you got a project manager, then you've got control accounts and control account managers managing each piece or each silo of that project. So I say that to give you some imagery so that you remember control accounts are also managed, and they are control points where management looks to exert further control. Then we have the planning package, which is above the work package, but below the control account. And the idea about the planning package is that we have known work content in there, but we're not going to decompose that content until we get closer to the period of performance. Let me give you a very quick illustration here. Let's say this whole project is broken out like this. This is happening in 2015. This is happening in 2017. And this is happening in, let's say, 2021. And I want you to assume, for the sake of this illustration, that every other piece of the project, every other piece of it has been broken down. Just imagine that we have, decomposition that went down to the right levels here. Okay, so there is nothing undecomposed. Everything has been decomposed except the planning package level. So right here, the planning package level, we can see this has not been decomposed. Why? Because 2021 is still further out. As we get to 2021, it then becomes clear what is happening in this ridiculous pandemic, epidemic. When you get further clarity, then you realize, okay, this is what we are doing in totality. We know that we have money in here, all right? We know we have known work content and money in here. However, we are not going to break it down until we get further clarity, until Tony Fauci proves himself. We are not going to plan any further. Are we going to get that vaccine? If we open up the restaurant as part of this project, will we really realize the benefits? Oh, we don't know. Well, let's wait. You see, let's wait until December 2020. Then we will begin to decompose our planning package into specific things we're going to do with that known work content and funding. You see what I'm saying? So just think about it as we know that we've got the money for the work. We've got an idea of the work, but the variables and the circumstances could change. So we're not going to plan yet. But as we get closer to December, then we know what we're going to do. You see, that's how you need to be thinking about planning packages. All right. Kathy says her customer tracks down to level 4. Yeah, a lot of government, I'm not surprised to hear that, a lot of government tracks down to level 4. When you're doing some other crazier systems, you find yourself going down into 7 in some instances. Really, I mean, like a project that I was planning in 2005, it is just probably coming to around 2020. That was a crazy project. That was a crazy project, but it was fun. All righty then. So my friends, here we go. A, B, C, and D. Last but not least, we have E, which we will refer to as, oh, you've already seen E is the control account. Good. So B, we haven't talked about B, the numbering system for the WBS. It's known as a code of accounts. And you need this to be able to answer the question, all right? Code of accounts is the numbering system that we give the WBS. So if we call a component 1.1.2, that's the code of accounts. You ready? All right. Here is your poll. All right. In the WBS, what is item A? Oh, that was quick. You guys aren't playing games. I'll give you about 30 seconds for these ones. Thank you very much. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank you for the private chats. Appreciate that. All right, let's end the poll. Share the results. And we have a lot of folks who went for the option of B. That is because it really is the root node, the topmost level in the WBS. A, it's the root node. Okay, so make some notes to yourself. The root node is the topmost level in the WBS. All right, here's your next one. Think about it for a little bit. You can open up your PMBOK guide if you need to. Let's go for it. What do you think about this one? 30 seconds. Thank you very much for the private chats. Oh, chatting to me privately. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Let's see what happened. It seems like majority of us chose C. Item B says numbering system. And I did say just before we started, the numbering system is known as a code of account. So let's stop for a second, because I'm not just here to show you slides. I want to add value to your prep. For those who may not be familiar with PMI's scope baseline, let's go to page 161. Under scope baseline, it says the scope baseline is the approved version of a scope statement, WBS, and its associated dictionary, which can be changed only through formal change control procedures, and is used as a basis for comparison. Then it goes into the details of what is in the WBS. Project scope statement, WBS. Go to page 162, WBS dictionary. The work package is part of the WBS, so is the planning package. So mentioning them as components of the scope baseline is like double counting what should be in the WBS, if you get what I mean. But what I want to show you here under work package, let's read. The lowest level of the WBS is a work package with a unique identifier. These identifiers provide a structure for hierarchical summation of cost, schedule, and resource information and form a, please highlight it, code of accounts. Each work package is part of a control account. See that? Is part of a control account. And then it says, a control account is a, highlighted, management control point. Why? Management needs to exert control in some instances so they can better manage the project. It's just part of our job as project managers to give management what they want. If management say, we're going to exert a control point here, we're going to look deeper into your project at this level. Don't just tell us, oh, the project is doing well, we're still on budget. No, I want to know each component, how are they doing individually? That is what the control accounts will do for you. So a control account is a management control point where scope, budget, and schedule are integrated and compared to the earned value for performance measurement. In other words, we could say, what is the health of component A and B and C and D? For every silo on the project, we can track the health. And that is what the control account does. So you've gotten two definitions here: code of accounts, the numbering system, and control account, the management control point. All right, so my friends, the answer to that question is indeed code of accounts. Okay, good. Here is your next one. 30 seconds. Item C. What do you think C is? Thank you very much. No problem. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's end the poll. Well done, my friends. And I really appreciate your participation. It shows me that you are paying attention. You did not leave Phil on Zoom and walk out of the room. Phil is on Zoom, but they walked out of the room. And they heard him running the test, so they had to run back pretty soon. Oh, they have to run back pretty soon. When I start acting goofily like this, I know I need a break. So let's end the poll and share the results. Majority of the people went with A. And let's see, is it A? So it says, what is item C? Undecomposed content, planning package. We got to take a look at this. So if you chose planning package A, you are correct. It is a planning package. But why is that the answer? Let's go to the glossary. And just so you know, before your exam, I would recommend that you do the glossary. Read that glossary inside out. Let's read planning package, if we can find the thing. Planning package, planning package. Oh, I see. They sprung a quick one on us. Page 713. It says a work breakdown structure component below the control account. You got to get that definition. A work breakdown structure component below the control account. Below. With known work content, but without detailed schedule activities. That's your planning package. That's why it's the answer. Okay? Good. No worries. All right, let's go. This is your final question about WBSs. I just need to make sure you got the technicalities of it. You know, to be honest, the whole scope stuff, I'm really targeting you knowing your WBS so well. Control accounts, work packages, planning packages, everything, code of accounts. You got to know it. You got to know it. All right, go for it. Item D, what is that? Thank you very much for the chats. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Woohoo! A home run. Everybody got this one right. Everybody got this one right. Work package. Thank you very much, my friends. You got this one right. Perfect. Okay. But wait, there is actually one more. Since you did so well on the last one, here's another one for you. 30 seconds. All righty then. Thank you very much. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. End. Okay. So majority of us have gone with option C. What does it say? Let's examine what it says very close. Schedule, cost, and scope are integrated for management oversight. That is a dead giveaway that it cannot be anything else but control account. So the answer is indeed what majority chose. C. Very well done. Well done. All right, let's try to land this ship. You guys have done really well. I need to get you out into a break so that we can be efficient in our next round. So the WBS dictionary, we've talked about this at a high level, but it's a narrative document of the effort needed to accomplish all the work defined in the WBS. Let me give you a quick illustration of this. So defining A class, what is it? Maybe a paragraph or two about A class and what it is, or B class or C class and stuff like that. This is exactly what we do in the WBS dictionary. We define each component in a fair amount of detail. Now, I know some of you have seen me present from PMI's treasure trove of, should I say, templates. And I'm just going to show you what a WBS dictionary could look like based on what the PMI published. Because it's their IP, I cannot share this in hard copy form, but I can show you on the screen what a WBS dictionary looks like. And this book was published back in 2009-ish. So they got new editions of it. But anyway, here we go. So you can see the WBS dictionary. It will define for you the work package name, the WBS ID, the description of the work, any milestones associated with that WBS component, and you're able to map it down to the activity level in some instances. This is going pretty far. It really depends on your project. You could go this far. You could keep it simpler. You could say, all right, you know what? I'm not going to put in any activity information. This is excessive. No, not this. Just this. And really, what I'm looking for is a description of the work. All of this is excessive for my project. That's fine. And other projects, you're like, no. We need all this detail. This is all good. So again, it's something that you can tailor to your project. It really depends on you. All right, so that's a WBS dictionary. And let's go back. Let's round this up so you guys can take a break pretty soon. You've done the heavy lifting here. All right, so that's Create WBS in a nutshell. Any questions about Create WBS or any points of concern? Any points of concern? Does it make sense? Good, okay, let's move on. Our next process that we're going to be talking about is none other than where your customer comes into the picture. We call it validate scope. Now, I know it sounds kind of counter, but validate scope is where your customer, the detective, is going to inspect the deliverable. So we use the icon of the detective to show that they're inspecting that deliverable. Does it meet our requirements? Remember the analogy of Phil's red drink? Does it meet his requirements or not? Is it what he asked for? This is where Phil finds out if you met all his requirements, if indeed the product scope was delivered. So we call it validate scope, but at the end of the day, if Phil says, it does meet my requirements, then you're going to get an accepted deliverable. Accepted means I accepted. Yes, this is what I asked for. This is it. This is what I wanted. Thank you very much, project team. I accept. It's called an accepted deliverable. And just remember, when the customer is inspecting, They could do a number of tests for themselves. They could pound away on the system. Maybe it's a website. They could send crazy traffic to it to test, to see if it holds up. Whatever they need to do to test that it meets their requirements, they do. And then we also have decision making, voting. What do we mean by voting? Well, if people on your team are testing on their own, they could vote to say, I think that's good, or no, I don't think that's good. And I've gone through that very recently with a firm that we're working with, and we had 12 different people in the validate scope process. Talk about a circus, because everyone has a different opinion. But if you use voting, sometimes you can consolidate all those different opinions. And that's pretty much what this is. There's not that much rocket science to it, to be honest. In fact, there's no rocket science to it. That is it. So this is going to go very quickly. So validate scope, okay? Validate scope is where you begin to shift towards the left of the table. You can see we are now in monitoring and controlling. So it's a monitoring and controlling thing, okay? In validate scope, as I said, you're going to use inspection, decision making. Is it a yay or a nay? What does this look like is a question I typically get. Oh, Phil, it sounds like all we do is inspect, but no, when they say accepted deliverable, they're really talking about product acceptance. So what does product acceptance look like? Well, it could look like this. It could be a product acceptance form, as you can see on the screen here, right? What is the requirement? What is the verification method? In other words, how did you do QC? And how are you going to do validate scope? And what is the acceptance criteria in the project scope statement? What is the status? A for accepted, R for rejected, something else, whatever, and then sign off. And that is what product acceptance looks like. And hopefully you won't have to get to the point where there are any rejections. You would have a change request and then you can redo it, hopefully. That is how a lot of projects are. And that's validate scope. It's very straightforward. Like when I talk about the technicalities of scope, honestly, this is not that huge a deal in my mind. Very, very straightforward. Okay, so that's validate scope. And we have a question for you, which I will skip. We will go into control scope, but do you have any questions? Any questions for me about validate scope? Oh, we got a question from Tina. How do you connect agile iterations within validate scope? Very good question. So in agile, those iterations of doing work, they all end with some sort of sprint review where there should be a demo, and each one of those sprints, they all segregated. Each sprint is its own sprint. It's its own world. But ultimately, the increments that we work on, it will get to the point where everything is accumulating and you're getting more and more stuff, but validate scope is done in increments. It's not one big bang at the end. In fact, gone are the days, even in predictive, where people will look for a big bang at the end and say, oh, did they accept it? No. We would have seen it coming by doing it in iteration. So that's a very good question. In the world of Agile, we do iterative acceptance, iterative, okay? So if everything has been accepted in increments, the likelihood of accepting the final thing is extremely high. See, so that's a very good question. In the world of Agile, very different. Good question. Okay, so finally, we have control scope. This is a very, very simple process. Why do I say it's so simple? Because there's a lot of repetition, a ton of repetition in control scope. These things that you see here, work performance information and change requests, we see them in so many processes. And bear in mind, I'm not showing you the laundry list of what PMI says is an output. No, I am focusing your attention on the key outputs. So WPI, work performance information, and change requests, those are very big. We're using data analysis we've got variance analysis, and we've got trend analysis. It is very important that you realize data analysis contains these two things of interest. And when you do a trend analysis, you're looking for trends across the baseline. But when you talk about a variance analysis, you're looking for any discrepancies or changes, variances. It's one thing to look for variance, but it's another thing to look for a variance across a timeline. So variance analysis, looking for variance. Trend analysis looks for trends. You could look for trends in the variances or other things such as that. And that's why they are put together. So let's go to our slides. We're pretty much done for now with all of this, but there's actually a few more things that I need to show you. I just need to make sure that you guys remember this. And this last concept I want to make sure you guys have down pat is none other than WPD, WPI, WPR, okay? So we start off with direct and managed project work. Direct and managed project work is going to give us that thing over there called WPD. WPD goes into all of these monitoring and controlling processes. Get myself out of the frame. So all of these monitoring and controlling processes are going to accept WPD, and then they are going to give out work performance information. So you can see work performance information is an output of those monitoring and controlling processes. Work performance information goes back to monitor and control project work. Monitor and control project work gives you work performance reports. I'm playing musical chairs here. And then work performance reports goes to these four down here, 3 M's and a P: manage team, manage communications, monitor risk, and PICC. So if you have not mastered this, WPD becomes WPI, becomes WPR, you need to, because in control scope, it is very, very, very much needed. All right, so one more time, control scope is going to give you WPI change requests, okay? So let's go to our slide where we have some conclusions here. And I might just draw you out the picture so that it sticks. Let me draw you out a picture of this very quickly. Direct and manage project work. This gives you WPD. WPD goes into all monitoring and controlling processes outside integration. It's very important you make that distinction. These all give you work performance information. This will go into monitor and control project work. Monitor and control project work will give you the output known as work performance reports, and work performance reports will go to the 3 M's: manage team, manage communication, monitor risk, and perform integrated change control. And if you're able to memorize this or get it down to the level where it is not difficult, it will help you throughout this study. You see that? And what I'll do is take a snapshot of it, and I will go ahead and send it to you in the chat so you guys have it in another format, because I think I have shared it a few times in previous classes. But this is a drawing which is different from what you have had in the past. So why don't you take that and try to make your own daily or every few days till you get to the point where you know it. Then you don't have to do it daily. But if you find yourself forgetting it, then you do it again. Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to our PowerPoint. And that's control scope. And honestly, there is not very much left. Okay. So here we go. This is control scope. We get WPI. We get change requests. And that's the end of the story. We are done. We are totally done. And what I would like you to do to kick the tires is to go take this quiz. Not now, not now. Overachievers, overachievers, hold your brakes. I'm not saying do it now. My overachieving friends, don't do it now. What you need to do now is take a break. So I'm going to chat this into you in the chat. I know some of you are chomping at the bit to take a quiz. Good Lord, you need a break. That's what you need. Please take a break. That's the link. And here is the password. It's got a password, PMP main boss. All right, you guys need a break. You need a break. Those of you begging me to give you time to take the quiz, I forgive you. I forgive you. You need a break. Go take your break. And let's wrap up scope by saying, in the world of the PMP or CAPM exam, there's a lot of granularity, my friends, and we have just explored, I'll say, a fair amount of it. But I don't want you to forget to go into every description, every image that has the breakdown of the ITTOs, every data flow image for every one of the 49 processes, and understand your key benefits. And lastly, the hidden detail in every process. And if you do that, your chances of success are very high. Okay? And with that, we're going to take a break. I'm going to start the 15-minute clock. You guys need a major break. You've done so well. Well done. I will see you in 15 minutes. When those of you who want to go back to view the videos, you are going to find a break in the video. So this is the end of video 1, which is roughly 2 hours plus. And video 2 will be roughly 1.5 hours. All right? I'll see you when we come back.